expect you to moderate the post-lunch session. We always call the post-lunch session as a graveyard session because I know after a good lunch and if I'm going to tell you to focus on reskilling, upskilling, and I'm going to be a difficult task. Keeping this in mind only, we got three outstanding speakers. I can assure you, two of them are joining us. One from Coimbatore, Tamil Nadu. Other gentleman, Vivek Chopra, is joining us from New Delhi. And I can assure you, personally, I would have walked miles to listen to both the gentlemen. Today, we are all indeed privileged, and it's really an honor for us to listen to them. And also, we have Lakshmi from Udaipur, from Seva Mandir, and Seva Mandir is one of the finest NGO doing some phenomenal work. I'll introduce it later. So we got three brilliant panelists. Two of us going to be virtually. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I don't want to be left alone on the stage. As Lakshmi is going to give me company, and she's going to share our insights on how Seva Mandir is really turned around the people Udaipur and how. And if you have any question on upskilling, reskilling, please keep it ready so that we have a session and the speakers are readily agreed to respond to all your questions. And the session for today is upskilling and reskilling during the pandemic is required for employment opportunities. You may be wondering what is upskilling, what is reskilling. And one thing is it will look like all same, but it's not same. Upskilling is when you are there in the same job, and I have seen in the corporate world many a time, why corporate, any place, if you don't keep upskilling yourself in the job which you are there, you become redundant there. You will be really passed over, you will be left over, and you will keep being, you can only tell, I'm the senior most, 20 years, I'm not done. But if you don't upskill to match with the what is the requirement of the organization, you'll be passed over. Today, the technology and today the environment is changing so fast. Any field you are in, you have to keep upskilling. Reskilling is you are in an area where the job which you are doing become redundant. So what do? You have to reskill yourself. You have to really realign yourself to redo everything. And because the speakers will really tell you how they are really telling the people to do this in their own way. So this is why this theme this afternoon is very important for each one of us. As an NGO, we do some phenomenal good work in our own field. But if we don't keep upskilling our team, I can give an example of Madras Management Association. Moment the lockdown was included last year, we are all totally used to in-person activity at MMA Management Center. We straight away switch over to totally hybrid model, totally online. So what we did, we upgraded the total technology in our auditorium, total technology. We trained all the people. We gave a laptop to everybody. Everybody become a tech savvy, and we are able to handle so many events. We do what in a month more than 40, 50 events, and annually more than 4 to 5 lakh people attend our events. And all that we do now hybrid. And when I saw the hybrid event, like even today, you must be experiencing what we are seeing on the screen. It looked like as if the person is going to be talking to you, and you will see Mr. Vivek or Bala is talking to you from in person. Only thing you won't be able to interact with them, and that is the only thing which we'll miss. And they are sure maybe next time when we meet both of them will come to us. With this, without any further ado, let me have the privilege of introducing the speakers and also call Lakshmi to please come and join me on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to Lakshmi for she is doing some phenomenal work in the Seva Mandir as a director programs. I'll tell you what she is doing as a director program. Please take your seat, madam. We have three speakers. The format of the program today, each speaker will speak 15-20 minutes, their insights on the theme. Thereafter, we'll take questions. I will have one common question addressed to all of them, maybe one specific question. If you have time and you have inclination, yes, there'll be questions from the audience also, so that you get inspired from listening to these people. Let me have the privilege of introducing Vivek. Vivek Chopra is got over 35 years in the field of experience. He's worked in different corporate sectors, and he's an expert in the field of coaching. Coaching today is as a fundamental requirement today if you have to be a great leader. And he has done phenomenal work in different fields, not only in the coaching. And he has trained over thousands and thousands of people. What he does is he brings the best in the people to really meet the commitment and organizational requirement. This is very, very important. You have to understand what exactly the person needs, mold him according to what is requirement for the organization and for himself, and make him a great leader. And his endeavor is to continuously upskill in this skill. Actually, that is what he imbibes in the people whom he is training from time to time. Vivek, it's indeed a pleasure. I know on a Sunday to get you over to come and speak. I know you must be having a tough time with your family. My apologies to you and your wife and for joining us this afternoon on a Sunday. Pleasure. We're all looking forward to hearing you. Let me have a
Thank you
quick
so much.
Bala. Bala is joined us from Coimbatore and Tamil Nadu. And Bala is heads Cognizant CTS. You all know what is CTS, Cognizant Technology, in the Reach Out program. And also, he also does quite a bit of work on SDG, what do you call him, sustainable development, also growth and other things. Each Reach Out program is so effective. Bala has also helped us in MMA to some extent and to great extent of technology upgradation. With jointly with them, we did quite a bit of work in all the schools to teach the to tell the teachers how you technologically upgrade yourself and how you have to really fit for the changing environment. That is reskilling. To understand not only technology means go to unmute yourself and speak in Zoom that anybody can do. How to prepare yourself for the technology internet class when you have 30, 40 people joining online. How to get data for various input through various social medium as a great teacher. And the Reach Out program, what another one, what Bala is doing, very, very good, which I'm really impressed by what Bala is doing is, he gets volunteers from entire Cognizant. Cognizant's got thousands and thousands of employees who volunteer to go and do programs at different villages, different segments, teach the people, involve with them. He's the leader for that, actually, identifying, taking the people. Today, I can understand one thing. If you're not a volunteer, that means you have missed something in your life. You have to volunteer. Today, you have to volunteer and go what the God has given you, some extra curricular, extra, input, insights, you must go and share it with them. Today, the collaboration is very important. We must volunteer to go work. I don't know, tell NGOs like you what is volunteering means, and volunteering is only one which will make us successful. And Bala, it's indeed a pleasure to have you with us again today. Lovely, and looking forward to again listening to you. Lakshmi, who has joined us in person, and Lakshmi works for Seva Mandir, one of the finest NGO, which gives empowerment for people and more so in the area of women empowerment. Today, in the pandemic, I know the speakers will also bring it out. The people who got trebly impacted are the women employees. Actually, women employees. One thing is upskilling, reskilling is difficult for them. Second thing, they have to not only manage the office, they have to manage home, because when they call work from home, it's not only work from home, work for the home also. And there's output is required so much of expectation from the office, as well as they have to do so much of work at home. It's becoming real challenge. And Lakshmi is a director of program. She is a social work head of masters in social work. And since 2001, she has been a part of Seva Mandir. And Seva Mandir done some phenomenal work to reach out over 5 lakh women employees and transform them and really empower them to make them world-class people to really with the skilling to do something for the society. I think great work, Lakshmi. It's a pleasure to have you with us and share the stage with you. Now I will request Bala to please share your insights for about 15-20 minutes. Thereafter, I request Vivek, then Lakshmi, then we go for the Q&A. Thanks so much, and we're all looking forward to an exciting afternoon. Over to you, Bala.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, sir. It's an honor and privilege for me to be part of this 37th Joint Staff Development Program. It's really exciting to be in a panel of esteemed guests. By their introduction, I'm dumbstruck right now. So I'll try my best and I'll share my experiences, what I have to share for all the participants and what we have done at Cognizant and what we are trying to do. So when I got an opportunity to be part of this event, I was going through an article, and it was a very interesting article that I read through. Way back in 2017, McKinsey had estimated that 375 million workers, which is roughly around 14% of our workforce, would have to switch occupations or acquire new skills by 2030. So in 2017, it was actually envisioned by McKinsey, but COVID actually made us to really accelerate that change, right? And reskilling and upskilling had to be accelerated. So it is not about just automation and AI because of that and the machine learning that we'll have to really upskill and reskill. It is about beyond that, right? The leaders have to start reskill and upskilling the workforce to the new business models that has evolved. So like sir was talking about right from MMA, it used to be in-person events, and right now it is hybrid, and everybody have to become tech savvy. And this event, right, it would have been really great if we could be in person, but unfortunately, due to the restrictions and the COVID situation, the model has changed. The business model has changed. The pharma companies where thousands and thousands of medical representatives used to be there, they have become online right now. So Cognizant as an organization, are almost all the IT companies, right? The moment lockdown was announced last March, everybody, had to, next 1 week to 10 days, everybody had to resume their work from home. The desktops were given, the laptops were given. So the business model has changed. So it is no more about upskilling and reskilling about digital and technology or cognitive capabilities. It is much more beyond. The reskilling and upskilling has to happen in emotional skills, adaptability, resilience, a lot more of life skills about when to say no, the art of balancing. So it is much beyond, right? Corporates have started looking at their learning strategies in few areas. Like, one is about how to skill their employees for the digital economy, that is distance economy, that artificial intelligence and machine learning, automation, all of that. Beyond that, right, there is a huge talent supply demand that is going on. Most of you might have heard, right, there's a huge attrition everywhere because of working from home. Earlier, if somebody has to attend an interview, he has to travel to a metro, and right now he's sitting in a rural village working from home. He can attend 2 interviews, interviews just sitting at home. So the supply and demand, there is a huge imbalance at this moment. So with that, right, the learning strategies have to really change with our organizations. So most of the organizations are really looking to re-strategy their learning and development and putting in a lot of budget to how can they really upskill and reskill employees. So as a corporate, right, Cognizant, way back in, again, like 2017, there is a Center of Future of Work within Cognizant, and we have published a book called 21 Jobs of the Future. So in 2028, what are the jobs that could be there that right now do not exist? So what jobs could exist in 2028? And next, a revised version in 2018, we released a book called 21 More Jobs of the Future. In 2029, what jobs could be there? So how could students in this era should be prepared? How could employer workforce in this current era have to prepare for those jobs? Because we have never seen that job. So that's something from a corporate point of view, from a Center of Future of Work, we have evolved, and that book is available for everybody to just Google and take a look into it. It's very insightful, very interesting. I request all of them who are working in the space of employability and education to just go through this 21 jobs of the future and 21 more jobs of the future. And as a corporate social responsibility, where I belong in Cognizant, like sir was telling, we have 3 lakh plus employees across the world in Cognizant, and within India we have 200,000, which is 2 lakh employees in India alone. So like sir was telling, I am responsible currently for enabling volunteering for all these 2 lakh employee volunteers in India. So we strongly believe everybody has a heart to give back to society, but not everybody knows when to give, where to give, how to give, and what to give. So that's what Cognizant management, way back in 2007, when we realized that when a lot of heartwarming stories were heard from the employees, they went to a school nearby, they started teaching computer science to a school nearby, and they went to an orphanage, they taught life skills to our students, and they went to a nearby lake, and we started doing lake cleanup activities. So when we heard a lot of it, right, so we Cognizant management felt that there needs to be a platform that has to be evolved. That's called Outreach. Cognizant Outreach is the platform, and I currently lead the India operations of Outreach. So within Outreach, we do a multiple pronged approach, but with respect to specific to upskill and reskill, we have, the moment lockdown was announced, right, before pandemic, pre-pandemic, right, we used to go to schools in person, teach students, and there is a beautiful program that we have called 100 to the power of 4. So we wanted to partner with 100 schools and enabling 100% pass in those 100 schools, and 100% passed students should complete 100% of their graduation, and then 100% they should get employed. So 100 to the power of 4 was a beautiful program that we had been driving. So we used to work with 230 plus schools, roughly 50,000 students, where our employees as a volunteers, they go on a weekday, weekend, and continue to give education and enrichment programs for them. Post pandemic, once the lockdown was announced last March, right, we were like all like stuck, and we had to alter and adopt. So we thought, we had been like, at least for me, right, like 18 years with Cognizant, I know the WebEx, Zoom, and Google Meet, mute, unmute, all this technology was so easy. But we realized that teaching community was something, it's complete new normal for them. So we thought, how can we help them? How can we support them? So we curated a program called Cognizant eTeacher, right from a basic digital literacy program, to how to use a smartphone to connect to a student and start teaching, how to use a laptop, how to use a desktop to connect and teach, start teaching or connecting to the students and start enabling education. Then how can you effectively deliver an online classroom? What are the tools and techniques that are available? There are so many tools are there, but how many of these free simulation tools available, free interactive apps available? How can you start using it? And then we also partnered with Adobe and delivered the next level of program to create their own content. How can they create their own posters, their own web page, their own short videos? So 3 levels of program was evolved, and at this moment, like we were able to uh, train around or enrich around 15,000 educators across India, and this program was welcomed in the US, Philippines, and Singapore as well. So this is all done through our volunteers. As a full timer with Cognizant CSR, I curate that program and I train the volunteers, and volunteers go and deliver the program to the teaching community. So we have partnered with multiple colleges. For the students, we are doing 3 different programs called CAB, Lab, TAB. CAB is Career Advancement Boot Camp. They need to know what is the career out there. Lab is Life Skills Advancement Boot Camp. They need to know, possess what are the life skills, strength, what they have. And finally, TAB is Technology, Advanced Boot Camp. So technology related training is also given. So these are some of the trainings that we offer to the student community. From a pro bono point of view, our employees, we started doing capacity building for NGOs. So we have a large Salesforce business unit where we deliver Salesforce implementation for our customers. But Salesforce offers a not for service pack. It is actually not for service success pack, NPSP. So it is actually for the not for profit institutions across the world. Salesforce offers a free Salesforce module for the NGOs, but not a lot of them have implemented. So our employees from Salesforce vertical go and implement and train this Salesforce CRM tool for NGOs across India. And NGOs, we have done design thinking workshops for NGOs, digital market, how to run an effective campaign for your fundraising. So we have done digital marketing campaigns. So we do any type of campaigns that are required for NGOs. We have started supporting the campaigns because we have a huge variety of skills within Cognizant. So these are some of the things that we do as part of our corporate social responsibility. As a corporate, we have the 21 jobs of the future that you have, and a lot of things that we are trying to do, reskill and upskill our employees as well. So with that, I'll stop here, and I think back to the moderator. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and looking forward for the further conversations over the course.
Thank you, Bala. It's a great insight. I know you're doing a phenomenal work, and all our NGOs, I'm going to share your contacts. They're going to be in touch with you. You're going to help them out so that you have to tell them that NGO not only upskilling, reskilling, how the technology to really reach out and achieve their objective. Vivek, we are eagerly looking forward to you. Vivek, over to you, Vivek.
Can I share screen?
Share.
I have PPT.
Yes. Yeah, you can.
I will do that. So thank you, Bala. That was just extraordinary. And thank God I'm speaking after you, because I think I want to build on what you said, so that there's no. So for upskilling yourself, there's a lot of knowledge that you can create for yourself. You can learn through Google. You can learn through so many. There's so many platforms now from where you can get a lot of knowledge and get new skills. But there is one more skill that one needs to develop in the new 21st century. And I wanted to introduce you to that. And what is this skill? This skill is called open mind, open heart, open will. This is an inner cultivation work that anybody who is dealing with a volatile world like that we are dealing with today. This is something that I think you could be before pandemic, after pandemic. This is really, really crucial for all of us to develop. What does it mean to develop an open mind? Well, open mind is a capacity to suspend our old habits of judgment. Whenever anybody is speaking to us, whenever we are interacting with people, our mind is full of judgments. We already are believing certain things in our mind to be true. And that does not allow us to see with fresh eyes. Judgment is our enemy. And it's very important for us to have an open mind, especially in this world where now you need to learn new things. Like Bala shared just a while back, that 375 million people would be needing new jobs. Well, you got to open your mind and look and see what is there, what is available, what do I need to do. So open your mind is a very, very critical practice. The second is open heart, which is the capacity to empathize. Now, when I say empathize, I don't mean sympathize. Empathize is to stand in the shoes of the other person and see from their eyes. See what is their real need. You have so many stakeholders. The government is your stakeholder, your boss is a stakeholder, your customer is your stakeholder, the people that you are dealing with, all the people that you're dealing with, they're all your stakeholders, your family is your stakeholder. If you are able to see from all the stakeholders' perspectives, that's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge. And we as human beings, we've got to learn to develop the capacity to empathize. Because decisions made without seeing the perspectives of the stakeholders, they tend to be not sustainable. They will not work for a long time because there will be a lot of pushback that no, this is not working for me. So before you make your decisions, it's very, very important to be able to stand in the shoes of the stakeholders. And then comes the last one, which is open will. Open will means, are you willing to let the new, the world is changing. The pandemic has come. It's a VUCA world. The VUCA world, which was supposed to take a little longer, has become very fast. Everything is changing so fast. Are you ready to connect to the emerging future? The future is emerging. Are you going to be ready? Kodak wasn't ready for it. Digital cameras came and Kodak disappeared. Nokia wasn't ready for Android. And Nokia really had, BlackBerry had a big problem. Many communication telecom companies, they are not ready for the new future that is emerging. They are collapsing. You've seen that happening all over the place. Many businesses are shutting down. Many people are losing their jobs because the future is changing and you got to develop the skill to have an open will. So now the question is, how do I do open mind, open heart, open will? How does that happen? So I'm going to show you an example of the pandemic. This is a simple iceberg model. The pandemic came within a month and a half. There were 1.3 million cases. There were 75,000 deaths. And everybody, all the governments reacted. All governments around the world reacted. They started putting the focus on ICU. They started putting focus on lockdown. What did they do for structure? They changed policies. They said testing, tracing, isolating, social distancing. That's what happened. The thinking, everybody started thinking differently. Before the pandemic, everybody was on their own trip. Separation was there. Now, with the pandemic, there is interconnectedness. It doesn't matter whether you're from north or south or east or west, whether you're a man or woman, you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter. No caste, no religion, nothing. Everybody is the same. And the thinking started to shift that we are all one human race. And the thinking started to shift. I'm not saying it's been done permanently, but it started to shift from ecosystem thinking to ecosystem thinking. You've got to start looking at things from the eco rather than from the ego. Ego, I don't mean only as arrogance. Ego, I mean as separateness. Ego is like, I am from North India. Bala is from South India. Now that's ego. We have two people on the panel right now sitting over there, one male, one female. That's ego, separate. We are separating ourselves. We have divided ourselves in silos for centuries. That kind of thinking is not going to help in the future. We've got to start thinking with eco. I'll give you an example of that. This is an ecosystem. This is hierarchy. One man on top gives the orders. The one below takes the orders, gives orders to the next, then they give. This is ecosystem thinking. Whereas on the right side of the picture, you will see there is ecosystem where everybody is connected to everybody. And now thinking together and coming up with solutions, that is eco, is very, very important. Even economics comes from the word eco. It doesn't come from the word GDP, right? Eco means the whole family. It comes from a word which means family, right? Our human race is a family. In our Hindu philosophy, they use Vasudeva Kutumbakam. The whole world is my family. This is something that is we've grown up with, but we don't live like this. We live with ecosystem. So this shift has to start, and it will take open mind, it will take open heart, and it will take open will. Ego, you are disconnected from the whole, and eco, you are part of the whole. That's the difference between ego and eco. And we are asking all of the people that we are working with to shift their thinking from ego to ego. So what is it going to take? It is going to take practice of listening. How do I listen to you? How do I listen to another person? How do we all listen to each other? All human beings, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, are judging. Our brain is made to judge. Nothing wrong with judgment. But when we are listening from our habits of judgment, we are not listening for anything new. Open mind, open heart, open will cannot happen as long as we are listening from our habits of judgment, which we are saying a name downloading. We're not downloading from computer, from the internet. We're downloading from the folders in our brains. Our folders in our brains have some information, some past, some knowledge. Not only our past, our parents' past, our grandparents' past. We have got all the past inside our head, and we keep referring to our knowledge. So when another person is giving us information in this new age, we are not opening our minds consciously to understand what is new that is being communicated to us. We sort of listen to other people, and you can see in your own, your boss talks to you, your wife talks to you, your husband talks to you, you're always saying, now I know what he's saying. Actually, nothing new has been heard. You cannot hear anything new because we are all downloading. So the first step is to catch your downloading and suspend it. If we cannot suspend our habits of judgment, we will keep listening to our old opinions and judgments and think that our opinions and judgments is all there is. For the new age, for the new world that is emerging, for the new, you want to upskill yourself, you need to reskill yourself. You have to really suspend your judgments and opinions and actually listen with an open mind, open heart, open will. Listening from an open mind means listening for new data, listening for new disconfirming data, that somebody is telling me something I didn't know. There's new knowledge coming to me. That is what it means to be listening with an open mind. To listen with an open heart, I need to stand in their shoes and walk miles with them to see the world from their eyes. That is open heart, emotional connection, listening from within the other. If you're an NGO, you are doing some work, you think they need this. Very good. It means you have a very good heart. There's no question about it. But a real open heart will sit and see what they are dealing with in their shoes, and then with them co-design what they need. Don't give them what they need, co-design with them. Another way to say that is, let's not keep telling people what to do. Let's ask them that, look, these are the options that are there. What are your needs? Let us together work out what is it that is the best for you. I remember talking to a gentleman in a village in Uttar Pradesh. He was an IS officer. He says, you're a city guy. Don't tell the people in this village how to live their life. You're a city guy. You live in air conditions. You live in big buildings. You live in fancy areas. Come and see their world and see what they need from their eyes. Because there's a different world and everybody has a different need. So open heart is very, very important. Stand toe to toe with them, stand in their shoes and see what is it that they see. They also see you. See yourself from their eyes. See how you occur to them. Do they trust you? And it's very important because whatever we are creating together requires a great degree of trust. And in the new age, the skill that you need to develop is to be able to open your mind, open your heart, to build trust, to build relationship, to build connection with the people that you're partnering for producing the results you want to produce. Then the last one is the highest level of listening, open will. See, we are afraid of a new future. We are afraid of uncertainty. Where uncertainty is something that scares everybody. And it's natural. But this is where open will, courage. Open will means being courageous, being willing to see the new future that is emerging. Fear of failure is a very big thing for a lot of people. Happens to everybody. I have fear of failure. I've had it many times in my career. But it is in that face of the fear that we are asking each one of you to be courageous and step forward and take an action and get connected to what is it that the needs are, what is it that all the stakeholders want. See, open heart, you're standing in the shoes of one stakeholder. Open will, you're standing in the shoes of all your stakeholders. And in this space of open will, you are someone who is not in a hurry to take decisions. You're holding the space for a lot of interaction so that together you co-create the results, co-create the solutions, co-create the actions that you need to produce the results. So practice developing your listening skills, go from downloading to open mind, open heart, open will. This is the key skill that I would recommend anybody to develop. If I have 2-3 more minutes, what is not going to allow you to open your mind? Your judgment. What is not going to let you open your heart is cynicism. What is cynicism? The fear of being connected to another, the fear of trusting another. We are afraid of people. If we give our heart, they'll break it. We're so scared. So open heart, and there is this voice of cynicism in the background. And of course, open will, there's a voice of fear in the background. So there are 3 weapons you have that can defeat voice of judgment, voice of cynicism, and voice of fear. The 3 weapons you have are curiosity, where you're curious, you get to ask them more questions to understand what is it that they are saying, to get real all the information that you need from the other people. That requires exploration, curiosity, being interested in what they are saying. Cynicism, there's only one way to defeat cynicism: compassion. Compassion. Open your heart. See from their eyes. See how they see you. See the fear they have. See the challenges they face. See the environment in which they live. I was talking to some friend of mine the other day. He says, when I was young in my village, we did not have any water. My mother used to go all the way, and this guy has worked in Ford for 20 years. He's a highly qualified coach. He's a highly qualified engineer. But he used to live at a time way back when there was no water in the house. And I have lived my life where I just open the tap and I have water. It's a privilege. So be able to understand what people are going through, you really need to open your heart. And voice of fear, there's only one way to defeat it: courage. Courage, everybody can be courageous. It's only in the face of fear that one can be courageous. If you have no fear, there is no need for courage. So practice courage. These are your 3 topics that I wanted to talk about, and I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Vivek. I can say it's a masterclass, and your talk on what level you have to see, look at your heart, and look at your mind, heart, and will. And I firmly believe it's a mind. If you manage your mind management, I think you achieve. And your thing of ego state, echo state is one. I think I've seen many guys, ego, what kills the people, and relationship, and many people are lost what they have built over a period is mainly for ego. And another important insight which you brought is, I mean, I remember of the statement, don't tell somebody, don't give them fish, teach them how to catch fish. I think that makes them become a great entrepreneur himself. And thanks for the great insight. And we are going to come back to you with a couple of questions. And I think your insight today really make them, people who are listening to really look at their reskilling and upskilling. Now we are going to request Lakshmi to share your insights about Seva Mandir and how you empowered so many women folks and make them self-empowerment and self-sustaining. Would you like to speak about that?
Thank you, sir, and thank you for inviting me. We are a non-government organization based in Udaipur, and so what Sudarshan sir had said, we believe in that ideology is that, how do you, make it part? How do you ensure that, there is self-development? Villages take charge of their own development. There is participatory democratic values in the villages. We work in 2 districts of Rajasthan, Udaipur and Rasamand, and we reach out to 1,500 villages and more than 5 lakh people, and not 5 lakh women, sir. It's more than 5 lakh people. Yeah. And we have 3 thematic areas. One is livelihoods. The other is human capabilities, as part of which we work on health, education, women's empowerment, early child care, nutrition. The third thematic area is institution building, wherein we sort of build institutions who are and prepare, sort of prepare them so that, they own their own development. They became part of, they participate in their own development. In terms of, so let me, since I will just change what I was supposed to speak on youth a little bit, but I'll give you a little context of what happened when COVID, second wave came in our area. There was, as you all know, there was high spread of COVID, and many, people in our area, people are dependent on agriculture and wage labors, and there is high migration for wage labor. So a lot of people, they came back to their villages, and so a lot of unemployment, and among them there were many youth. So I'm going to come to that again. We have heard that, around 20-30% people have gone back to their place of work, but most of them are still in the villages. Because of COVID and government guidelines, the childcare institutions are all closed. I mean, we have government ICDS program which runs Anganwadis, and then we run our own Balwadis for early childcare, and all for children of 0 to 6, all are closed. And the schools are closed. So you can imagine the kind of workload it has increased on women. Now they have, everybody is at home, their husbands, their younger children. And earlier, at least they used to send these children for 4 hours to these centers wherein their children could get good care and nutrition. And now they have to look after them along with their household work, cooking, fetching water, and that has increased. Children and youth, of course, they lost, because the schools were closed, they lost touch with education. And one of the things that happened, I think which has happened for good, is that, there has been, since the youth have come back, because youth and men mostly migrate here, they have come back to the villages, and now they are, because it's been 2 years, and now many youth, they don't want to go back. They want to work in the villages, and that's the opportunity that we see, and I'm going to speak a little about that. In our area, I'm going to focus most on youth. In our area, as I said, youth mostly migrate for work. They study up to 8th grade. And they mostly bring cash money in the households. And earlier, before pandemic, they were totally disconnected with agriculture and village development. Koi kheti nahi karenge, koi jungle mein kaam, they'll not do anything. They wanted to, even though the conditions were really bad in the areas of work, Ahmedabad, they go to Ahmedabad, Surat, they work as construction workers, they work in the hotels. and the conditions are not really good, but even then, they felt that they're earning something and they have a lot of freedom. But now the trend has changed. Now the youth, I mean, many of the youth that are in the villages, they don't want to go back. They are getting interested in agriculture. As Sudarshan said, this year, since all of them were in the villages, they did a lot of work on agriculture. And this time, since there a lot of work on agriculture, and Sevamandi does a lot of work on agriculture improvement, poultry, goatry. Agriculture productivity also sort of increased this time in the second year of COVID. So now the youth is here. They don't know what to do. They want to go back, but not. They are worried that they don't want to go back, and also worried that what will they do if I go back? And they want to stay here. So the question that is for us, and we would like you to suggest also, is how do we retain them here? What do we do, and how do we prepare that they stay in the villages? What we feel from our experience of our work with women and families in the villages is that how do we connect youth to agriculture? How do we create their interest in agriculture? For that, we have to make agriculture interesting. We have to, because also there has to be value addition in agriculture. How do we modernize agriculture? How do we get them? When we have many youth in our areas who are saying that now they want to take poultry, which they otherwise before pandemic they were not interested. So how do we create their interest in poultry, do value addition in that, so that they become poultry entrepreneurs? How do we create their interest in marketing of forest produce? Second area that we find that we need to work, we have learned from our experiences, how do you build their life skills? When I say life skills, now the need is, they, as I said, that youth migrate to other areas, but the conditions, they are not aware of their rights. They can't negotiate for their wages. So how do you sort of build their negotiation skills so that we can't stop migration? If suppose there are some chunk of youth who are migrating, how do they sort of become more confident and are able to negotiate and get the right price for their work? Then there are other issues. We feel that there is, since because of COVID, there is a lot of focus on their financial and digital literacy has been important, but I think now it is the right time that we teach youth financial and digital literacy, because a lot of technology has come. They need to know how to, if they earn, how do they manage their money better? How do they learn use of digital technology? So that's one life skill that we feel that will be very useful. The other area is sexual and reproductive. Here the youth, they get married at an early age. At early age, then there is early, the girls, they become pregnant at an early age. So youth, even young boys and girls, after marriage, they leave schools. They drop out of school early, and they get into household work, or they or they start earning. So how do we sort of, make them aware about sexual and reproductive health? Then the third area that we feel is how do we build ecosystems so that youth, they stay in the villages and they take interest in the village resources. Village, when I say village resources, agriculture and allied activities, livestock. Here we have a lot of non-timber forest produce. How do they take interest in that? So we need to have good health care system for them. We need to have good education facility. We need to have good wash infrastructure. How do we sort of train youth in small businesses? We've heard that in our areas also, the youth who have migrated now, who come back, they've started some small food stalls. Koi Maggie bech raha hai. Some of them have started, very few, but yeah, some are selling eggs. So how do we sort of, now that they are back and they want to do it, since they have eggs in the houses, they are culturally doing poultry, how do we sort of build their capacity so that they take this app as an activity, income generation activity? Other idea that we have is, now since there are many people here and also from different companies, is how do we get more industries in the villages? You can have more ideas, but how do we bring, what we are doing now is, Sevamandir has worked on agriculture, and now because of our agriculture improvement practices, scientific knowledge and skills that we have provided, agriculture productivity has increased. And now we are saying we do value addition. sort of they have the production increases and then they sell it in the market. So so agri entrepreneurs, so that we are doing. So how do we, sort of get more people into rural marketing, small industries, food industries. The other thing for ecosystem we feel is that, we Seva Mandir, we believe that even for women, you were saying that, so we need to have spaces where they can, voice their, they can, talk about themselves, they can raise their issues and also address their issues. So need to have platforms. Now, since we are into technology, digital era, can we have virtual platforms for youth, wherein, they talk about issues, they talk about different issues that affect their lives, and also about livelihood options. So yeah, and having these platforms will also, we feel that there is a lot of gap between, there is a generation gap, you think differently, and there are people in the villages, old, their parents, the grandparents, they have, so there is this generation gap. So having these platforms, when they come together and talk about it, they'll understand youth better. So yeah, that's the point that I'm making, sir, about youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lakshmi. I think earlier we planned one common question, then one question. I think I would see a lot of interest in the people who are here. They may ask a lot of questions. So due to that, I'll request the panelists. I'll put one question to each panelist, what is relevant to them. Thereafter, we'll open the question to the audience, so that will make it interesting. Now, with your permission, we'll do that. Now, I'll go to the first question to Mr. Vivek. Vivek, your presentation was so inspiring, and you are a coach of renowned international coach. I know you're a TEDx speaker. There's so many people are really looking forward to come and train by you to become things. Now, post-pandemic, and with the system changing, where everybody started looking inwards. For example, the countries started looking inward. They don't permit outside people to come there. The companies started looking inward. And the pandemic is separated. At least we could at least go and meet eye to eye contact and speak and get things done. Now, without everything, you would be contactless. Under these circumstances, as a coach, how do you inspire the leaders to perform under difficult situations to face the future? And not only face the future in terms of innovation and competition, also take along people who are working in your organization, where the work from home has become a way of life. So how do you manage this under these difficult circumstances? What do you think?
What's very important in the situation, in this situation, especially when people are distant from each other, is that they must engage with each other and talk to each other and get connected to each other. Practice empathy. Empathy means get to understand what is it that the other persons are dealing with. I have done many productivity workshops in the last 1.5 years since the pandemic started. And one of the biggest complaints that I find, especially men and women who are working from home, is that the boss doesn't understand that they have children, they have to take care of them, they have to cook the food, they have to clean the house, they have grandparents, in-laws, they have this, they have that. And then the boss wants to have a meeting at 9 o'clock at night when dinner is happening. So very important is that rather than live as expectation, they must actually engage, talk to the people and understand what they're dealing with. It's not a transactional relationship that you have as a leader with your team. If you are a transactional leader, I mean, it's okay in the army, in the Air Force, you need the hierarchy. We'll lose the war. We need a general. We need all of you guys. The way you run the army, that's very important. But you don't run organizations like you run the army. With the organizations, they are not trained to be soldiers, right? They want some connection with you. So more and more that people are connected to each other, open mind, open heart, open will. More they're connected, they will together come up with the solutions. They'll together come up with what is needed and required. And when people are connected, they'll give you a heart. When they are connected with a heart, they'll give their life to you. And that's what happens to soldiers. They trust their boss. But in the organization, they're not trusting their boss. The heart connection is not there, no. It's a transaction. So today, I've seen in the last 1.5, 2 years, many organizations. We work with many organizations. One of the first things they're doing is getting the managers and their reportees and the managers and the skip level managers, that they're connected with each other. They're actually connected. They have some empathy. They understand what each other are dealing with. Once that happens, they can create miracles together.
Thank you, Vivek. Absolutely true. Empathy. I know a very, very senior corporate leader employing more than 30,000 people. And when he spoke in the MMA platform, he brought it out that in one of the town hall meetings which he has got with the senior people, and when he was talking to one of the directors, I think his son came and interviewed, "Hi, uncle." Then he was shocked. But what he said, no, let him. I want to talk to your son. He spoke to him for some time. Then he said, by working from home, he brought it, which is very, very important. I think it's really kindled many thoughts out of us. He says, working from home, we are infringing into their rights. Actually, we are from the office. I taken his home space and denying all the people the space which is theirs. Everybody's got their own place. And under these circumstances, the empathy is the one which really bring out. I think Vivek, what you brought out is very, very important. Another thing he said, as armed forces, we strongly believe that trust. I think you build the trust and people give their life. Now let me move to Bala. Bala, you said today the technology is ruling the world. You said everything has to be around technology. Now technology has got own advantage as well as the other dark side of technology is also available. Now, not everybody can afford the technology. Now, how do you make all the schools, like I know you're adopting a lot of schools and bringing out technology transfer, but I have done some work in CSR, our organization. There, the children, the annual parent income is less than 50,000 rupees per annum. And where the child used to pick up the father's telephone, and the father said, no, my auto ko time ho gaya, chalo telephone karke you'll run the auto. The guys are now sitting in the vegetable shop, sitting in the thing. And I've seen what is really a poverty today. I think that is a eye-opening for all of us in MMA, that the CSR work really told us. Now, under these circumstances, how do you balance between the technology and the need of the common man and also the need of the society? And what would be your initiative from the Cognizant to make sure that gap, the skill gap in technology and in terms of affordability is going to be bridged? What do you, Bala?
Thank you so much, sir. I recollect one of a session which I attended with Anshu Gupta, who is the founder of Gunj. He said, like, for any transformation, for any project to become sustainable and to become making a difference right in this community, he said, like, three things are very important: awareness, accessibility, and affordability. So AAA approach, right? So he quoted a very good example, which was like very, very thought provoking. So during the 2004 tsunami, right, Andaman Islands were like really devastated, and people from here, right, we were all like sending relief materials. A lot of relief materials were sent to all over the coastal regions, and a lot of sanitary napkins were sent to Andaman Islands. And after like few months, some of the relief people went there, and then for their surprise, right, the sanitary napkins were used as facial tissues. So the awareness was not there. Accessibility was there, affordability was there, but awareness was not there. So for any project to become successful, right, any transformation should happen in terms of CSR or sustainable development goal or a community impact. Awareness, accessibility, and affordability is very, very important. So on that hand, right, the schools and education system there is an UNICEF has a live dashboard that shows how many children are having access as of today to internet, as of today to education. Probably a month back, I saw 164 million students across India, or across the world, I'm sorry, across the world, do not have access to education, do not have access to a device, do not have access to internet. So the gap is huge again, but we don't have a choice. 65% of children in primary school today are going to do a job that doesn't exist. And over 80% of children on an average, this is again UNICEF statistics, right? 80% of children on average have lost at least one specific language or math ability during this pandemic because they were not able to continue education. And whom we are dealing with currently, it is Generation Z. It is like beyond millennials, right? Generation Z. And there was an interesting article from World Economic Forum that says 51% of Generation Z students learn by doing. 38% only learn by seeing. And the hard truth is that only 12% of Generation Z learn by listening. So gone are the days a lecturer or a teacher just going into a blackboard, using a blackboard or a whiteboard, chalk and talk method is not going to help these generation Z is not going to like that, because that's what 51% they want to do something, construct something, learn by doing. So given that, right, it is the era of blended learning. So even yesterday I was doing a session for 120 plus teachers through ASOCHAM about introducing them to phygital classroom. So physical plus digital. So all these like 18, 19 months of pandemic, right? Teachers and educators were forced to adopt technology, start digital teaching, though they liked it or though did not like it, they had to learn digital technologies and they had to start doing virtual teaching. Virtual digital teaching was happening. But when the schools are reopening, when the colleges are reopening, right, they can't just go back to their traditional classroom methods of chalk and talk. So they need to apply all the learnings that they have learned so far. So we call it as a flipped classroom. Classroom should become a space for interaction for the students and the teacher and not for teaching. This, we have like terms like synchronous and asynchronous, right? Asynchronous mode of teaching where live interaction is not required has been practiced already in this 18, 19 months. So it should continue. Students should do the learning back at home and the classroom should become an interactive way. So there's a beautiful model that's been evolved for years together, and people and teachers and educators have started adopting it. It's called SAMR model. So teachers have start looking at substituting the traditional method of teaching with technology. And A stands for augmenting. How can this technology can augment the way of teaching? And then they'll have to modify the way of teaching. That's M stands for. And R stands for redefining the way that education system is going on. So SAMR is the model that all of them have to start going in. So to me, sir, to address the question, right? Yes, we all teachers can adopt, all teachers can, but there is still an accessibility issue for a lot of students. A lot of students does not have access to technology. But to me, right, that is not very far. So all of you will know, right? Like when we had wired telephones at our home, it took ages for all of us to have a wired telephone connection, landline connection at home. And then it took few more years to get all of us to get that feature phone like Nokia 3310. And from there to smartphone and smartphone to a tab and a smart TV, it was very fast and very quick enough. We did not wait for decades to come. And the phone that you buy today is obsolete tomorrow. So the evolution of technology is very fast. So companies like Microsoft, Google are coming up with phenomenal programs as part of their foundations to bring in access to internet and devices across the world. So Google is planning to introduce free Wi-Fi across railway stations. I think they have partnered with IRCTC to bring in railway, mobile access, internet access to all railway stations. Microsoft has a beautiful program that has been planned upon. So there is so many things that are coming in. So to me, right, yes, that change was coming in, but COVID accelerated the change. It put us a little bit stalled. Or COVID actually, I would like to thank COVID, because if not now, right, this technology adoption of technology in the education system would not have come, at least for the next 5-10 years. This had come. COVID has brought in that change and that accelerated that transformation, and we are at the transformation stage, and it will that will happen very soon. So the role of a teacher doesn't change. A teacher's influencing doesn't stop in the classroom, it goes beyond the classroom. So I think this change is coming in, and I'm really excited to be part in this era of the transformation. And it is a problem that all the corporates are thinking about. And is, like 20-30,000 of the corporate CSR funds, 30,000 crores of CSR funds in India are spent in education system. So it is a matter of time that will get addressed soon, sir. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Bala. Really appreciate it. I think you have been very optimistic. We're also with you, and I think the change is coming very fast. It's not too far where every kid will have an opportunity to listen to. Now, moving on to Lakshmi, I think some phenomenal work in the state of Rajasthan. I mean, working with so many villages and 5 lakh people is not an easy job by any means for an NGO. I know that. Now, I want you to tell us, you mentioned the migrant labor, when they came back, they suffered a lot and they adapted themselves to the opportunity available here into entrepreneurship. So I want to tell us your experience from Seva Mandir, how you are changing the mindset of the people not to migrate, stay back, get on with the work as an entrepreneur, you'll be better off.
Well, that's a difficult question, sir. But one thing that we have been doing is that we have been, see, skilling and reskilling is just not a year's work. It takes years. Everything you do, you have to constantly work on it, on improve, upskilling and reskilling. And Seva Mandir has, the work. What is the backbone of Seva Mandir is the institutions, that we build. So we have, wherever we work, one thing that we do is we build institutions. We tell to get, people that you have to come together and you have to have a Gram Samuh. I mean, the concept of Gram Swaraj that Sudarshan sir was mentioning. The Gram Samuh then is sort of trained, and everything that we do, whether it is let's say we build a a small dam or any cut, Gram Samuh will decide where it has to be built. Who will contribute and what will be their community contribution. Who will be the families who will take part in constructing it. So all that decision is by the Gram Samuh. Since we have a lot of, Seva Mandir has done a lot of work on agriculture, livestock, and we recently have introduced, new work in, because, people also want cash income. So we've introduced, floriculture, aromatic plants, growing aromatic plants, so these are the new interventions that we are thinking, also, people have been doing poultry traditionally, but how do they do it scientifically? Pehle jo hai, I mean, they were not vaccinating the chicks, so mortality among chicks was very high. So how do you, sort of protect chicks from diseases? The chicks, they just used to roam around, and a lot of chicks were eaten by cats because they just roam around. So how do you build night shelters for chickens so that they are safe and you have more, I mean, you get a lot of production, of meat and of eggs. So basically value addition in the activity that we do. Goatry, so basically here they, they rear local desi goats. So can we do breed improvement? So we've been into breed improvement. We introduced Siroi bucks, we bought them. And then how do you sort of then, because then you get the size is big, they sell goats, so that you get more income. So how do you feed goats better? So feeding practices, both in case of poultry and, so these are the things that we are doing. So idea is that, whatever they're doing, how do they sort of, do value addition in them and earn more income through it. So idea is, so that is what we plan to do with youth also, sir. That, we make in agriculture now, as I said, the interest has come back because of COVID, and I think that's a very good thing, sir. So we have an opportunity now. We tell youth, and youth as it is, they're seeing that, खेत में काम करेंगे आज खेती में, there is so much, it's their own land, it's their own forest. I mean, if they, sort of protect forest, do plantation, I mean, they are going to get fodder, they want to get fuel. So idea is whatever there in the village, how do you sort of develop village resources? How do you do it more scientifically or more in a better way, so that you, sort of earn more from it? I guess that's what we're planning to do.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Very inspiring, and we need thousands and thousands of Seva Mandir around India if you have to achieve the dream what we are all looking forward. And your concept of making the people don't be a job seeker, be a job giver, I think is fantastic. That's like a big round of applause for the great job what that Seva Mandir is doing. Now we got a couple of more minutes for the questions. If anybody would like to ask a question to three gentlemen, please tell your name and address the person to whom you are asking the question, and they'll be very, very happy to respond to your question. Over to you, madam.
First of all, I want to thank all the speakers. That was a really wonderful discussion on the topic of upskilling and reskilling and redesigning when we are talking about digital inclusion at this time, and that is really a need of that time. All the things are we are doing on the digital platform. So my question is basically from Mr. Balakumar sir. My question is, what kind of venues we should adopt in terms of redesigning, also taking care of all the gaps, so that we will be ready for the upcoming situations? And one more thing, and what is the scope for collaboration with other NGOs and CSOs?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We we don't have a choice. Please take a seat, ma'am. We don't have a choice right now other than collaboration. So for all of us to become successful, right, the need out there is huge. The support that is required out there is for huge. The knowledge that individually we have, all of us, is huge. So unless and until we build that collaboration, I don't think we'll be able to make that impact. So like Steve Jobs says, right, we want to create a dent on the universe, right? We need to have that collaboration. So like I would like to, pick from Vivek sir's, presentation, right? We need to build that ecosystem. So joining hands together, we can really make a difference. And again, again, going back to my thanks to COVID, right? We were all like a little bit slow in terms of redesigning and uh, adopting to technology, transforming ourselves to technology, this era, right? COVID has forcefully made us to make that changes. So knowingly or unknowingly, we have started getting into our digital world. So right now, right, like I'm sitting from Coimbatore, and you are able to, we are able to connect from Chennai, and then I'm able to ask the question. I mean, you're able to ask the question, and I'm able to respond to it, right? So in terms of redesigning, first of all, like collaboration is very important, and in terms of redesigning, right? When we think of a program and when you want to redesign, right, I always recommend, right, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The wheel is already there. So someone somewhere would have invented the need out there, like the program that we wanted to do, or somewhere there could be something that would be already available. So will my wheel run on a a runway, or on a normal road, or a muddy road, or a bumpy road, is what we need to know. And what tire we need to put it on the wheel is what we need to think upon. So the wheel is already there. So you can find n number of resources out there on the digital platform, and maybe collaborate, right? We'll be able to learn so many things across the world. But what is in it for us? Exactly, Vivek sir is again quoting back, right, with the empathy. So first comes empathy. In design thinking workshop, right, like when we do, the first stage of design thinking is empathize. What your customer wants, what do they need, why should somebody need that? So I can quote an example from Henry Ford, right, the inventor of like motorized car. So when Ford was looking at building a car, right, a car, an engine, putting on an engine and then running a car, right? So he empathized. Before that, right, before the invention of car, people were using horses for moving from one place to other. So the need out there was not taking people from one place to other. Horses were doing it, horse cars were doing it. But the need out there was people wanted to travel faster. Horses can run only to an extent. It can't run much for faster. So if somebody wants to travel from Coimbatore to Delhi, horses can only take probably 10-15 days. But if I want to travel 1 hour, so there needs to be something beyond that should come. So he empathized the need out there for the customer. And for that customer, the time was important. Then there was a motorized engine that came in. So empathy is the key thing that will design when you redesign, right? Empathy should come in first place. And the awareness about what is that we are trying to do, and accessibility and affordability. And with all these, right, when collaboration comes in place, I think a lot of places, right, NGOs really find opportunities to collaborate. I'll take one example from Coimbatore before I close this call, right? At Coimbatore, where I live, so we have built a consortium of NGOs. There is nothing legally documented anywhere, but we have a WhatsApp group of NGOs. It's a consortium of NGOs, and we have launched a website. All of us joined it together, along with the government of Tamil Nadu in Coimbatore district administration. We launched a website called nammakovai.org. So where any NGO can place a request, and the district authorities will look if they can address the problem. If not, it will be put up for public view to the public, and public can contribute to that cost, or government can contribute to the cost, or a corporate CSR can contribute to the cost, or an individual philanthropist can contribute to the cost. So it is a consortium of NGOs. When all of us thought through that, there is a need out there everywhere. but how can we collaborate and how can we aggregate and how can we all join together to solve it? So that's what I hope I was able to address your question, ma'am. But thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. And Mukta.
Is from Delhi, Mukta from Vishwa Yuva Kendra. They do some phenomenal work in that part of the country.
Hello,
Okay.
Bala and Vivek and Rashmi. It was really nice listening to all three of you. Bala, but I feel over the entire conversation, the one side of the coin only. I'm little being cynical, we can say. But when you look at the larger picture, we've talked about the micro part, the cognizant 2 lakh people addressed. And then a very important component came from Vivek about the behavioral input. And that's an excellent thing when everybody should practice. But when it comes to the larger part of the country and when we call upon upskilling and the rethinking on their skills and the government program of skilling, that came to a complete halt during the Corona. Digitalization through that, I was just looking for some input coming somewhere from the two of you at least, because she is from a different sector. How could you really collaborate with the government existing Deen Dayal Upadhyaya program, this skill program, Prime Minister's program, where lakhs and lakhs of students unemployed had an opportunity to get into some kind of a skill. For 2 years, that entire program has come to an halt. Recently, they have restarted. That's the other side of the coin. And I was just wondering when this thing will really come up. Because if we address the post-pandemic situation, it has to be a macro scene, a macro perception to the entire issue. So I was just wondering, instead of the micro, what could be the reason and how could we really, when we're talking about collaboration, we're talking about affordability, and then we have a program, and that program, how can we really take it forward? And then she has certain issues regarding how to really give them those opportunities of skills at the village
Vivek,
level.
sorry, okay, you understood. Vivek would like to take this question because you have been dealing with large.
But I
number.
mean, it is two, I mean, the two of you, not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So the solution to all the problems is pay attention to it. Our government, our people, we are all capable people. We have everything we need in our lives. We have only one thing missing. We don't pay attention to anything and make sure that that thing turns around. If everybody just collaborated and paid attention to one area, that area will transform. From the time of the pandemic, the attention stopped. People stopped paying attention to what was important. And wherever the breakdowns are, that's because nobody is looking. There is no attention on it. Just take, for example, this whole problem. There are 145 million children who do not have an electronic device. If people just paid attention, every year, 145 million or more electronic devices are going in the dustbin. They are going into the waste paper basket and they go to the Kuradan. If the government and all the electronic companies and all the people together just gather them, they are doing thrown, just gather them, clean them up, got them back to working condition. 145 million children in the world will get telephones within 1 year. This problem of they don't have a digital equipment will disappear. And what is the cost of that? The cost is nothing. India can afford to give that to all the countries in the world. But I'm not forget that Mr. Azim Premji, there's a little donation that he gives every year. That is enough money to make sure all of the problems are gone. The problem is nobody is paying attention. If it is the challenge which they are facing in the village, this is because nobody is paying attention. They are paying attention everywhere else. We are not paying attention to the challenges that are there. If we get together, pay attention, we will solve all the problems on this planet, especially of our country.
Thank you. I think Bala,
Sir,
Bala is doing phenomenal work with the government. I know Cognizant has done some phenomenal work. Quickly, 1 minute, can you share?
I can add I can 30 seconds alone, sir. So just to, I wanted to respond to that question as well, right? Like Vivek sir said, Cognizant post-pandemic, when we all started working from home, there were a lot of desktops where the immediate thought was like we initiated that we don't want to go to the landfills. So as we speak today, 45,000 desktops have been donated to educational institutions across the globe. So that is something that we have done, and we have inspired other corporates also to start following it. We have talked to NASCOM Foundation to make it as a national level campaign. So there are possibilities like that, like from little what we could do. 45,000 desktops, used desktops in good condition have been donated. 3,600 tabs, new tablets have been purchased as part of COVID relief fund and been donated in the state of Telangana, Karnataka, Maharashtra, and NCR. So like sir says, everybody have to start paying attention, and then everybody starts putting it together. I think no problem or no stone can be unturned, right, sir? That's what I strongly believe.
Thank you, Bala. I think what Mr. Tandon said is the right thing, and because today the government started understanding and the people have started demanding. And you know, Tandon yourself, you are doing so much of work in Tamil Nadu, from Lucknow to inspire so many people, telemedicine and other things. That itself is a government project which you are working. That shows the government is working today. All that we need is the good leadership, and that is what is lacking. Where our distinguished leaders this afternoon, I think a big round of applause to Vivek, Bala, and Lakshmi, the great leaders in the respective area, done some phenomenal work and shared their insight this afternoon and made our people, each one of us, to learn something. And when you more of this hall, I'm quite sure you would have become more wiser, more knowledgeable. And I think they all kindled your thought process. One thing you must carry when you go and have your tea this break, have empathy for whatever you are doing with your employees, your people, whoever surrounding you. Empathy you bring it, I think, is going to make the world what we all want like to see. Thank you so much. You have been a fantastic audience. Thank you, Vivek, joined from Delhi, and Bala from Coimbatore, and Lakshmi here. Thanks, and bye-bye. Over to the host, please.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to all speakers and moderator. We are very much happy to listen to you. Just now we have tea break, and we will be here after 15 minutes.